Some people do not hate going out. They hate what it costs them. A weekend text pops up. We're all hitting a bar Saturday. You in? And before you even answer, you feel it. The drop in energy, the noise, the small talk, the effort of looking alive for hours. Not because you're rude, not because you're weird, not because you can't function, and not simply because you're introverted. It goes deeper than that. There are people who can do the outside world perfectly well. They can work, talk, show up, smile, handle things. But the moment isn't free for them. It has a price. Too much stimulation, too much unpredictability, too much pressure to be on when all they want is to be still. So staying home does not feel like failure. It feels like relief, like getting your energy back before anyone has the chance to take it. For some people, home is not just where they live. It is the one place where their nervous system stops negotiating. The one place where they do not have to perform being okay. The one place where existing feels simple again. And sometimes that pattern started long before adulthood, long before weekend plans, long before anyone asked, "You coming out or not?" Now, to be clear, not everyone who loves being home has a problem. This is not automatically agoraphobia. It is not automatically depression. And it is not fair to call someone antisocial just because they do not crave constant plans, noise, or company. For many people, this is not a disorder. It is a pattern, a preference, a way their mind and body learn to feel most at ease. Choosing home is not the same thing as being trapped by fear. That distinction matters. Because yes, if someone stays inside mainly because of panic, deep distress, or pain that has made the world feel unbearable, that is a different story. But for many others, staying home is not collapse. It is not avoidance in the dramatic sense. It is simply where life feels more manageable, more honest, and less expensive on the nervous system. A lot of the time, this starts earlier than people realize. Think about a kid coming home from school and having to figure out the rest of the day alone. Nothing huge had to happen. Sometimes a pattern like this is built in a much quieter way, just by handling too many ordinary afternoons on your own. You walk in, drop your bag, find something to eat, turn on the TV, or sit in the quiet for a minute, or start your homework because nobody is coming to organize the evening for you. So you learn to organize it yourself. And little by little, home starts to mean something very specific. It becomes the place where nothing is being asked of you. No one's mood to manage, no need to read the room, no pressure to seem cheerful, social, or easy. You can just exist there. That matters more than people think. Because when a person spends enough time like that, being alone stops feeling strange. It stops feeling like something to escape. You learn how to fill your own time, how to settle your own mind, how to enjoy your own company without needing constant noise or constant people around you. So for some people, being alone does not feel empty first. It feels peaceful. And that is part of why this goes deeper than introversion. For some people, home was the first place where they could fully drop their guard. Not everyone who loves being home grew up the same way, and it does not take some huge wound to create this pattern. Sometimes it is built in very ordinary ways, just by having to rely on yourself a little too early, a little too often. So later in life, home does not just feel comfortable. It feels familiar. It feels like the one place where your system does not have to stay switched on. Maybe you do not just like being home. Maybe home was the first place where you did not have to brace yourself. And that is exactly why being home can feel so different later in life. If home was the first place where you could finally drop your guard, then outside will often feel like the place where you have to put it back up. And that takes energy, because going out is not just going somewhere. For some people, it means more noise than they want, more people than they need, and more unpredictability than they can relax into. A simple plan can run long, a quiet night can turn loud, one conversation can become 5. Someone new shows up. The mood shifts. Now you have to adjust again. That constant adjusting wears people down. At home, there is less to manage. You choose the lighting, you choose the sound level, you choose what stays on, what stays off, when you eat, when you answer your phone, and when you do not. You decide how much access the world gets to have. That is not a small thing. For people like this, home often feels more manageable, less demanding, less draining, it takes less out of them. They are not just protecting peace, they are protecting predictability. And once you see that, a lot of their choices stop looking strange. They are not always saying no because they are distant or cold. Sometimes they are saying no because they already know how much effort that yes will require. And this is where a lot of people get misunderstood. What drains them is not social life itself. It is the performance wrapped around it. It is having to look like you are having more fun than you are. It is having to sound more interested than you feel. It is reacting with the right amount of energy so no one asks, "Are you okay?" It is staying socially on long after your mind has already started leaving. That is why something as simple as a bar can feel exhausting so fast. The music is too loud, so now everyone has to shout. You lean in, smile, nod, repeat, pretend you heard the joke, pretend you are still fully there. 20 minutes in, you are already tired. Not because you hate the people with you, because the whole setting demands too much performance at once. And then there are the smaller things. The polite laughter, the interested face. The "we should totally do this again" that everybody says and almost nobody means. The casual enthusiasm. The tiny scripted exchanges people do all day without even noticing. Some people can move through all of that easily. Others feel every bit of it. And over time, they develop a very low tolerance for inauthenticity, not because they are arrogant, not because they think they are above everyone else. They are just tired of interactions that ask them to be present in a way that does not feel real. The outside world often mistakes this for coldness, but most of the time it is just exhaustion from unreality. They do not hate connection. They hate scripted connection. And that is a very different thing. There is another part of this that people often miss. Some people do not like being seen too much. Not because they are secretive, not because they are trying to be mysterious. It is just that constant visibility feels intrusive to them. Too much access, too much exposure, too much of that quiet pressure to keep presenting yourself to the world. So they do not feel a need to post every place they go. They do not need to share every plan, every meal, every good moment, every proof that they are doing fine. They are not trying to disappear. They just do not want their life to feel public all the time. And that is part of why home matters so much. At home, they do not have to curate themselves. They do not have to think about how they are coming across. They do not have to stay visible. They can just have a life without turning it into a performance. For them, privacy is not hiding. It is recovery. It is the relief of not being watched, not being interpreted, not being pulled into constant low-level contact with the outside world. And once you understand that, staying home stops looking like distance. Sometimes it is simply self-protection. And this is the part people often get completely wrong. Many of these people are not bad at life outside. They can work. They can handle errands. They can show up, communicate, solve problems, and deal with people when they need to. They are not staying home because they are helpless. They are staying home because they have learned how to reduce friction. They order what they need. They work remotely when that makes sense. They keep their social plans selective. They stop wasting energy on things that drain them and give very little back. So from the outside, it can look like avoidance. But from their side, it often feels more like efficiency. They are not incapable of life outside. They are just no longer impressed by unnecessary friction. That is an important difference. Because once someone knows what costs them energy, they start making smarter choices with it. And to people who live more externally, that can look strange. But for the person living it, it often feels practical. Not dramatic, not dysfunctional, just efficient. That is also why many of these people do not depend much on outside approval. If you have spent years learning how to manage your own time, solve your own problems, and conserve your own energy, you usually build something quieter inside yourself. You stop needing constant feedback to know what something was worth. You finish a task well. You know it was done well. No one has to clap for it. You make it through a difficult week, keep your word, handle your responsibilities, protect your peace, and that already means something to you even if nobody else notices. That is a different kind of center. A lot of people are trained to look outward for reassurance. Did people like it? Did anyone notice? Did it land? Did it count? But people like this often live with a different question. Did it feel true to me? And that changes everything. Because when you are used to measuring your life from the inside, attention from the outside stops being the main source of value. It may still feel good sometimes, but it is no longer what makes the experience real. When you learn to witness yourself, the crowd stops feeling so necessary. That is why these people are often misunderstood. Others assume they must be missing something because they are not chasing more attention, more plans, more visibility, more reaction. But many of them are not deprived. They are simply less dependent on outside confirmation than most people are. And once you understand that, staying home starts to look different again. It is not always withdrawal. Sometimes it is what life looks like when a person no longer needs to be constantly reflected back by the world. But here is the harder truth. Home can be healing. It can be the place that restores you, settles you, gives you back to yourself. But safety has a shadow side. Sometimes the very thing that protects you can also make your world smaller. Not all at once. Quietly. Gradually. So gradually that it can feel like peace when part of it is also retreat. That is not a judgment, it is just honesty. Because not every preference is free of cost. Some people are choosing home because it genuinely fits them, because it is where they think clearly, rest deeply, and live most honestly. But some people are also choosing home because it is the only place where they do not feel braced, the only place where they do not feel watched, pushed, or emotionally on guard. And those are not exactly the same thing. What protects you can also reduce your world. That does not erase the comfort. It just means the story may be a little more complicated than comfort alone. And maybe that is why this matters so much now. Because modern life keeps pushing in one direction. Show up, be seen, stay interesting, keep posting, keep proving that your life is full, active, social, and worth watching. But for a lot of people, that kind of life feels exhausting long before it feels meaningful. It feels performative, too visible, too public, too dependent on being noticed. And that is why home can start to feel like the last honest place left. Not because home is perfect, not because people are bad, but because home is often the one space where nothing extra has to be added. No image, no social pacing, no pressure to turn your life into something constantly legible to other people. So this is not always antisocial. A lot of the time it is selectively social, energy aware, sometimes self-protective, sometimes simply more truthful than the alternatives. This was not always a flaw. Often, it was a function. In a culture that rewards visibility, some people choose a life that does not need an audience. And once you see that clearly, staying home stops looking like failure again. It starts to look more like a quiet refusal to live too far away from yourself. So for some people, home is not just where they live. It is where they feel least distorted, where they do not have to overperform, where their energy stops getting pulled in 10 different directions, where they can return to their real pace. And maybe that is the deepest point here. Maybe they are not running from life. Maybe they are refusing a version of life that keeps draining them away from themselves. And if that sounds familiar, if a loud weekend bar has never felt as appealing to you as a quiet night at home, if you feel more restored when you can sit alone, listen, think, and understand, then maybe that is exactly why Psyche-Life exists. This channel is for people who want to understand themselves more clearly, for people who want social psychology explained in a simple, honest way. For people who have felt strange, distant, or different and want to see that a lot of what they are living actually makes sense. If that is you, subscribe. If this video named something real in you, leave a like. And in the comments, tell me this. When did home start feeling better than the outside world? Because sometimes one clear psychological insight can change the way you see your whole life. And sometimes what looked like a flaw was never a flaw at all. It was an adaptation, a pattern, a function. If quiet nights, honest thoughts, and understanding yourself feel more meaningful than weekend noise, then this channel was made for you.